Hello, today we're going to be discussing section 9.1, which is on surface areas of prisms. Our essential question for the day is how can you find the surface area of a prism? Surface area of a rectangular prism. Our key idea for the day is that the surface area of a rectangular prism is the sum of the areas of the bases and the lateral faces. And all that means is that to find the area around the entire outside of a prism, a shape like this, we need to take the sum of all of the areas of the 6 faces. So we're going to find the area of this front face. We're going to add that to the area of the right face. We're going to add that to the area of this top red face. Add that to the back face, the left face, and the bottom face. Once we've added all 6 of those areas together, we will have determined the total area of the outside of this figure, or we will have determined the surface area of this figure. Before we go into any calculations, the first thing we're going to do is recall how to draw this 3-dimensional figure as a 2-dimensional shape. Or, another way of saying this is that we're going to recall how to create a net for this prism. You may recall that we've previously practiced drawing nets by using this animation. If I take this slider and slide it to the left and to the right, I'll be able to see what this figure looks like as a 2-dimensional shape instead of a 3-dimensional object. Pay attention to where each of the sides are going because we're going to need to draw this on our own. As I slide this slider to the right, we see that that top starts to unfold and the left, right, and front also start to unfold. The top stays with the back face so that 2 of those rectangles are connected, and the other 3 are just single rectangles around that bottom rectangle. So what I end up with are 2 rectangles because the top was attached to one of the side faces, and then I have the front, the back, and the left face all folding out from the bottom face. If I fold it back up, we can watch as it recreates that box. And one more time, that top unfolds. It is connected to one of the faces, so there are 2 faces folding out to the right, and then the front, back, and left fold out as single faces around the bottom rectangle. Now what we're going to do is not only draw the net of one of our objects, but we're also going to label it with lengths. Now these objects don't have any lengths labeled on them, but for our purposes we will have values for the lengths and the widths and the heights of each of our objects. So we're going to need to assign values for the length, the width, and the height of each of these rectangles. When we do that, we're going to be able to find the area of each individual rectangle. So I'll be able to find the area, for example, of this top rectangle, the left rectangle, this middle rectangle, these 2 right rectangles, and the bottom rectangle. Once I find the areas of those 6 rectangles, I simply add up all of those areas to find the total surface area of our original box. So I'm going to go ahead now and unfold this rectangular prism that we have here to form a net. And the way we're going to do this is by unfolding everything around the back face of this rectangular prism. So this back face I'll go ahead and shade green. What's going to happen now is this top red face will fold up. This bottom face, I'll go ahead and shade that red as well. This will fold down. The face on the left, this face here in blue, is going to fold out to the left. And then I have 2 remaining faces to unfold. I need to unfold this front face and this right face. Now I'm going to keep these 2 attached to one another. So there's almost a hinge right here on this corner. I'm going to keep those 2 attached and unfold them flat all the way out to the right. When we unfold our prism like this, we end up with a shape that looks something like the following. Again, I unfolded everything around the back face, which I'll go ahead and shade green again to match my prism. So this lateral face is the back side of my prism. I then unfolded the top of my prism to obtain this top base. I then unfolded the bottom of my prism to obtain this bottom base. The left wall folded out to flat on the left. And then the right two walls remained attached to one another. So right now we're talking about this right wall and the front face. Those two stayed attached to each other and they unfolded to form this long right side of my figure. Now from here, we're going to go ahead and label all the components of my shape. So I need to look at my original prism and use those values to label the new shape that I'm working with. I need to find the length and the width of each of these 6 rectangles that we have. Well, looking at my prism, if I unfold this top rectangle, it has the dimensions of W, if I look down here at the bottom of the prism, W and then L. So the width and the length of this prism are going to be W and L. When I unfold this top side, this L is going to end up being the top of that rectangle. So in this diagram, we have the L on the top, and this W is going to fold up vertically, giving us that width of our rectangle. So again, as in this diagram, we have the width of that rectangle. Now we need to look at maybe the right-hand side of our figure. The right-hand side of this figure has the dimensions of W and H. So this rectangle here is going to have the dimensions W and H, and that rectangle corresponds with the smaller rectangle on the right side of this figure. So the dimensions of that rectangle again are W, and then vertically we have H. Looking at this larger rectangle, this is the front of my prism. So I need to look at the front of the prism, and I see that one of the dimensions is L, and the other dimension of that rectangle I can find by looking at the H towards the back of the figure. So the dimensions of this rectangle are L and H. I need to continue around my shape. I know that the dimensions of this middle lateral face are also going to be L and H, and we can just find that by looking at what we've already labeled here. For this bottom rectangle, I know that the length is going to be the same as the two above it, so this length is also L. And if I fold this rectangle down, I end up with something that looks like this, where L is the length and this W is going to be the width. So unfolding that rectangle, I find that the width is W. And again, this should be a replica just of the one above it, the red one above it on the top, so our width should be the same. When we unfold this rectangle on the right, I have a distance of W if I look to the right for my width, and then the other dimension is going to be this vertical distance, which is still H. So now from here, all I'm going to do is determine the surface area by finding the area of these 6 rectangles separately and then adding them together. So the first rectangle we can look at is this red rectangle. The area of this red rectangle is just going to be L times W. Similarly, the area of this bottom rectangle is L times W. Now I have a lateral face. The area of this lateral face is W times H. The area of this rectangle here is going to be L times H. The area of this smaller rectangle is W times H. And the area of this larger rectangle is L times H. So if I were to write all these out, I've got 2 of the LWs. I've got 2 of the WHs. And I've got 2 of the LHs. To find the surface area we're looking for, all we need to do is simply add these 3 things together. So algebraically, our formula is 2 times the length times the width, 2 times the length times the height, plus 2 times the width times the height. The LW represents the area of the bases, the top and the bottom, while these other 2 in blue represent the area of the lateral faces, or we just call those essentially the walls of our prism. So the red is essentially the roof and the floor, while the blue represent the walls. If we add all 6 of these areas together, we will find the total surface area of our prism. So we're going to go ahead and find the surface area of this prism shown. First thing I'm going to do is to draw a net. Now I'm going to allow the back of this figure to remain stationary, just like I did in the previous example, and I'm going to unfold everything around this back side. So the back of my prism is going to be this long, thin rectangle in green, and I'll go ahead and shade that. And then from there, I need to unfold this rectangle vertically. I'm going to unfold the bottom rectangle vertically. I'm going to unfold the left wall, and notice this is kind of a larger rectangle, so I'm going to make it somewhat larger. And then I'm going to unfold the right and the front. The right is attached to the green, and it's a larger rectangle. So I have a larger rectangle. But then the front is also attached to that right side, but the front is a smaller, more thin rectangle. So your net would look something like this. And now it's just our job to label. The bases of the larger rectangles are 5 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and put a 5 for these larger rectangles. The bases of all the smaller rectangles are 3 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and put 3s for all of the bases of these smaller rectangles. Now the height of the larger rectangles are going to be 6, so I'm going to go ahead and put a 6 in for all of the heights of these rectangles. The only measurement we are now missing are the heights on these red rectangles. So I'm going to go ahead and fill those in. When I fold my red rectangle up vertically, one of the measurements is 3 inches, and the other measurement that we're missing is this length here. If I look down to the bottom, I see that that length is 5. So that second measurement that I'm missing is going to be 5. Now we simply find the area of all 6 of these rectangles and add them all together. This top rectangle is going to be an area of 3 times 5. I'm going to go ahead and fill it in since I found the area. This left rectangle is going to have an area of 6 times 5. I'll fill it in since I found that area. This middle one has an area of 3 times 6. This one on the right is 6 times 5. On the furthest right, we have 3 times 6. And then this bottom one is 3 times 5. Now adding all 6 of these areas together, we will find the total area of our figure, or the surface area of our prism. So I've got 15 plus 30 plus 18 plus 30 plus 18 plus 15, 45 plus 48 plus 33, 93 plus 33 gives me a total of 126. And since we are talking area, I'm going to put my units, which are inches, and area is always square units. So 126 square inches. For our triangular prism, the idea is very similar. I'll unfold everything around this back rectangle. But when I fold up the top and the bottom, notice that they are triangles. So when I fold up this shape on the back, there's a triangle. And on the bottom, there's also a triangle. So I have kind of a larger rectangle to start. That is the back side of this prism. And then a triangle going up, and a triangle going down. And then from here I do need to unfold the left wall. It remains attached to the back, and I unfold the right wall, which also remains attached to the back. So those 2 rectangles fold out something like this. Labeling our rectangle, you'll see the following. And we did this by just looking at the lengths and the widths of all the rectangles and the lengths of all the edges of the triangles. From here, we can proceed to calculate the area of each of these 5 shapes and then add them together. Here I have 2 triangles and then the 3 rectangles. When I find those areas and add them together, I get a total of 84 square meters.